Hello, my dear students, and the rest of the learners. Welcome to part 27 of a 95-part series of tutorials in object-oriented programming series in C++. In this presentation, we are going to continue looking at the implementation of objects and classes with our focus being on what we call friend classes. My name is Meme JM, or you can simply call me Emily Swap. When we talk about a friend class, what is a friend class? A friend class is a class that has been declared with the friend specifier in the member list of another class. This means that a class can be a friend to another class. Therefore, a friend class has the following characteristics. My dear students and the rest of the learners, before we look at the characteristics of a friend class, it is very important for you note that in object-oriented programming, like in using C++, you may have more than one class with almost similar data members, such that you have class A with certain data members, and the same data members are still in another class, and the data from those data members in each of those classes is almost the same, or is supposed or expected to hold almost the same values. So instead of repeating the data members in each of those classes, what we just need to do is declare the data members, that are being repeated in other classes in one class, and then make those other classes that will need to make use of those data members to become friends of the class that contain the data members that those classes are expected to access. Just in the same way that if you have me as your friend, it means that there are certain privileges, there are certain levels that I can reach, which other people who are not your friend may not be able to reach. And therefore, when you make a class to be a friend of another class, it is simply meaning that this is a different class, but because you want to give it the privileges or the rights to access the private members of the current class, then you make that second class or those other classes to become friends of the current class. That's why we are saying that such a class that has been given the right to access data members of another class, yet that class is not a member of the class in which it has been made a friend, then that's what we call a friend class. So, what are the characteristics of such a class that has become a friend of another class, or that is said to be a friend of another class? Number one, such a class as the reserved word friend keyword appearing in the prototype only and not in the definition. What are we saying? What I'm saying is that if you have a class that you want to make a friend of another class, then what you need to do is to prototype that other class as a member in the current class. So you prototype that class within the definition of the current class using the reserved word or the keyword friends. So you precede the name of that class that we're making a friend with the reserved word friends. So you don't define, you don't define, you don't define that other class that you are making a friend of the current one within the friend or within the class in which it has become a friend. What you just need to do is to prototype the class in the same way that we learned about prototyping of methods within a class. In those cases where you want them to define a function outside of the class in which it was a member. Secondly, since that class that you are making a friend of the current class is a non-member of the class of which it is a friend, you have the freedom to prototype it either within the private or the public section of the class. In other words, you can prototype the friend class and either the private scope or the public scope of the current class in which it is a friend. Member functions of a friend class can access private data members of objects of the class of which it's a friend. What does this mean? It means that once you have made a class to be a friend of another class, then that class has gotten the right to access the private data members of the class in which it has been prototyped. Just in the same way as if that class was just a member or a method, just as if that class was a method of the current class. For example, if class by the name UnitScores is to be made a friend of class called performance, then the statement friend class UnitScores should be within the definition of class performance. Now, as we are saying that if you have a class called performance and you want to make the class called UnitScores to become the friend of this class called the performance, then what you just need to do is to prototype UnitScores under class performance. And how do you do it? You have to write it as follows: friend class UnitScores. It does not matter whether the statement declaring class results as a friend is mentioned within the private or the public of class performance, just as I've said. Now, the member functions of class called UnitScores can access the private data members of objects of class called performance. This is wonderful. What are we saying? In fact, when we are making classes become friends of other classes, we are even reducing the amount of code that you would have written in your program. Why? This is because we are saying that once you have made a class to become a friend of another class, number one, this class that has become a friend of another class is able to access the private data members of the class in which it is a friend. Secondly, we are saying that those functions or those methods that have been defined within the class which is a friend to another class have or can be able to access the private data members of the objects of the class in which that class has become a friend. In the following example, the friend class called UnitScores has a member function that is called print that accesses the private data members called score1 and score2 of the class called performance. And it performs the same tasks as the friend function called print that we learned in my previous presentation. So any other members declared in the class called UnitScores also have access to all members of class performance. In a nutshell, we are saying that once you have made a class to become a friend of another class, then that class that has become a friend is able also to access all members, all of them, excluding none of the class in which it has become a friend. So if the class called unit scores is a friend to the class called performance, then the functions, the members of the class called unit scores are able to access the members of the class in which the unit scores is a friend, and that class is performance. So when this program is executed, the statements score 1 is 45 and score 2 is 62 are displayed. So this is a sample program that is demonstrating the aspect of making a class to become a friend of another class. So the name of my program is friend classes. We have the outstream, that is preprocessing directive called outstream. We are using namespace standard. I know you know this if you have been following me in my presentations. Let's now focus on the class called performance. So we declare our class or we define our class. So we have class performance. Under it, we have two private members. Remember, even if you don't proceed or you don't write the reserved word private under the class, those members who are not indicated as either public or private automatically gain the private access level or private scope. So we have private data members who are score 1 and score 2 of type integer. Then now we are making a class called unit scores to become a friend of the class called performance. And you can see we have prototyped it. This is prototype. And you can see where have we placed it? We have placed our prototype for the class as a private member of this class. In other words, remember we have said that we have the freedom to decide whether to prototype your friend class under private or under public. Whichever of the case you prefer, your friend class will work in the same manner. So we have prototyped our class on unit scores using the word friend class unit scores. And then we have public members of this class. One of them is the member or method called performance. Now, this method called performance is doing the following. It is getting this value called 45 and assigning it to the private member called score 1. Then it is assigning value 62 to the private member called score 2. So score 1 is being assigned score 45, while score 2 is being assigned value 62. And that's the work of the performance method or the performance function of the class called performance. Now, I hope you remember what this function or what this function that has the same name as the name of the class is called. What did we call it? Ask your friend or think. What did we call it? We call it the constructor. The constructor. Remember, in the previous presentations in this series, I talked about constructor and destructor. If you forgot, I would like you to go back to the tutorials in this series from tutorial number 1 to where we are today, so that you can be able to gain a clear understanding of what we are doing. And That's the end of our class definition. So the class called performance is having a special member who is a friend class. Unit scores. Then we define the class that you have already made a friend. Note, we only use the reserved one friend in the class in which we are making that other class a friend. When it comes to defining the class that we have made a friend of another class, we don't precede that definition with the word friend, as you can see. So you can see that my class tag does not have the reserved word friend. And then this class has a public member who is called print. This is a function. This is a function that is receiving a parameter called performance. And what it is receiving is the pointer. It is the pointer to the class called performance. That's why we are receiving the address. So in other words, the parameter that is being received by the method called print, the parameter that print function is receiving is the address of the class called performance. And specifically, this is so because the friend class has access rights to the members of the class in which it is a friend. Now, if this function or this method called print has been able to receive the address of the class in which it is a friend, it means that it is now able to access the data in those members. And therefore, it's important for me to emphasize that the reason as to why we have the parameter called performance, as we are going to see, we are also going to have performance as an object to manipulate our classes. So let's see, we are going to see where it is going to come from, or how we are going to do it under the main function. Remember, you can have an instance or an object with the same name as the class that it is manipulating, and also with the same name as the parameter. So the function or the work of this function called the print is to read the value stored in the member called score1 through the object called performance and write it out. So the statement score1 will be displayed on the screen, followed by the content of the member called score1 who is found under the class performance. And then the cursor will move the next line. Because I hope you know what we call the new line operator. After that is done, the compiler will again write out the sequence of characters score2s, and then it will pick the content of the memory or content of the data member called score2 through the object called performance that is expected to manipulate that class and write it out on the screen. And that is the end of that function. So this function or method called print is performing the task of receiving the data in the members of the class performance and writing those values out on the screen. Then we go to the main function. Under the main, just as I've said, you can see that now we are having a declaration of an instance or an object to manipulate the members of the class called performance. So performance object performance object is of type performance, meaning that this is an instance or an object to be used to access and manipulate the members of the class called performance. Then next, we are also declaring another object called UnitScores object, or an instance called UnitScores object, which is instance for the class called UnitScores. So UnitScores object is of type UnitScores. The next statement, or what the compiler is going to do next, you can see it is now receiving, or it is getting, the object called performance object. In other words, it is now passing the object. It is passing the object for the class performance to the print function, which is of the class called UnitScores. In other words, we are invoking print function, which is a member of the class called UnitScores that is being manipulated by the object called UnitScores object. And as we invoke that function, we are passing into it one argument, which is the object for the class called performance. So once you have passed an object to a method, it simply means that that method can be able to access the data members of the class, the data members of that class, and also any other data that may be required. So you are giving it all the rights to access the members of the class. And therefore, in this case, because you are passing over the argument, the object for manipulating the class called performance as a parameter or as an argument to the UnitScores class through the object called UnitScores object, then it simply means that we are giving out the rights of the class called performance to the class called UnitScores, and more so to the method of the friend class called print. So once that is done, once the compiler has been able to invoke this statement, it will go first to the class in which UnitScores is a friend, and then it will go to the definition of the UnitScores, and then specifically to the function that is being invoked, which is print. So once this is done, the data members of the class called performance will be brought in through the object called performance. Remember, performance is a placeholder. In this case, is a parameter. You have seen in the main program, we are calling it performance object or object. That's what is being received under the parameter performance. So from there, it will be able to access those members, get the data, write it out, get the data, write it out. And once this statement is, or once this semicolon is invoked, the compiler will go to the next statement, which is return 0, return the control back to the operating system, and end the program. That's how that program will work. So the following is a demonstration on how this program is compiled and executed in C++, and the kind of output that it will generate. In other words, let's code this program in C++. So I'm going to launch my C++ program. Here it is, Microsoft Visual C++ 2010. What I want to do is to execute the program that we have already discussed, I compile it, I execute it so that you can see how it will behave. So this is my program, or this is my C++ program. Now, in this program, what we are going to do is we are going to write our new program. And how do we do, or how do we go about that? What we just need to do is to click on a new project. Of course, remember, I said that we do this when we are working or we are coding our program or our source code through Visual Studio, C++. So, just as I said before, the demonstrations that I'm giving you, I'm using Visual Studio C++ 2010. And therefore, the most important thing for you to note, my dear students and the rest of the learners, is to know how you can initiate or load your C++ version and be on the editor, integrated development environment, especially under the editor section in which you do your code. So in our case for Visual Studio 2010 C++, what we do is we follow this process that I'm following. And if you have been following my presentations, you must have known how we create programs using Visual Studio C++ 2010. Otherwise, you can start yours in a different way in your computer because the code for the program will just be the same. So the name of my program or in my function will be friend classes. Remember, you should always give meaningful names to your program. And then, of course, I'll proceed and wait so that my C++ IDE gives me the room to create a new file. So I'll click on code, then C++ file. The name of my file will be, I'll give the same name as the name of my project, and that is friend classes. Then I'll click on add. So regardless of the method, my dear students and the rest of the learners that we have used to display your editor, what you now need to do in the editor is to code your program. So which program are we coding? The program we are coding is this program. Therefore, I would advise, just as usual, that you take your exercise book, write this program or code this program in your exercise book, and then once you are done, you can then transfer it or write it in C++ editor. The other way, just as I've been saying in my previous presentations, is for you to copy this program in a Word processor, for example, Microsoft Word document. And then once you are done with coding this program there, you just copy this source code and you paste it in the C++ editor. So as my demonstration, I'm going to copy mine. I have already coded my program in Word, not coding, but typing. So I'm going to copy my program that I have already written in my editor or in my Word processor. And then I will just paste it on the C++ editor. You can also do the same. You can copy my program, paste it, or you can just write my program in your editor or in your Word processor, like Microsoft Word, then just copy it and paste here. Once you have confirmed that your code is okay, if you have written it in your exercise book, before you transfer it in your C++ editor, do what we call dry running. Go through the program, find out whether it has any syntax errors, look at its logic, and once you are convinced that it's ready for coding, then code it in your C++ editor. Once you are through with the coding the program, always remember, when you are coding, make your program readable. So indent where you are supposed to indent and let your code look presentable, including where you place the reserved one or the reserved ones and the rest, as you can see. So this program, this code is looking presentable. It's readable, as you can see. You can follow it very easily and very nicely. So that's my program. That's my program. Once you're through with the coding, you click on save. Then you proceed and convert your source code to object code by compiling. If there are any errors within your code, your compiler will show those errors. But if our program has no errors, we are going to receive success message. So for Visual C++ 2010, you click on build, then build solution. You can use other methods to compile yours if you're using a different version that is not having the build menu. But the key one is to click on the compile or to compile. You go under build, click on the compile, but for Visual Studio 2010, you click on build, then you click on build solution. Now you can see that my program has been successful. The compilation has been successful, meaning that my program has no errors. Let's now run it. We run it by clicking on the debug, then start without debugging because our program has no errors. But if it had errors, you will click on start debugging. So let me click on start without debugging. Good. You can see that my program has already given out output. That is score 1 is 45 and score 2 is 62. That is exactly what I had explained here, that this program is going to give out those statements. I had said, or I have just said, that when executed, the statements score 1 is 45 and score 2 is 62 will be displayed. And that's exactly what you can see from this screen here. You can see that this program is able to make use of the friend class called UnitScores, and it is able, or the function called print, which is under the friend class called UnitScores, is able to access value 45 and value 62 from the class called performance. Remember, these values have been given out or have been assigned, or those operations have been carried out by the function called performance, which is a member of the class called performance. And because the friend class called UnitScores, or because UnitScores has been made a friend of the class performance, you can see that this method called print, which is a member of UnitScores class, is having the rights of accessing the data members of the class called performance. And in that case, that's why this print function and the UnitScores class is able to display the values contained in the members of the class called performance. And that's all. So let's press a key to continue. And remember to save your work as usual. You can always save your code if you are not saved. So That's how we work with the friend classes. You can continue to part 28 of 95, in which I'm going to be looking at what we call the friend functions. We have looked at friend classes in this presentation. Now the question is, can you have what we call friend functions? And if you have friend functions, are they supposed to be at the friend class or in an ordinary class? So how do we make use of friend functions as we implement objects and classes in object-oriented programming? So you will get that information and that knowledge from my next presentation, which is part 28 of the 95 part series that you can also access from Emily Swap ICT YouTube channel. Congratulations for learning part 27 of 95 on friend classes and the implementation of objects and classes in object-oriented programming. You can access videos for the other parts in object-oriented programming series, as well as other computer or ICT videos by clicking or tapping on Emily Swap ICT YouTube channel below this video. Remember to subscribe to the channel by tapping on subscribe button below this video in YouTube if it's not currently reading as subscribed. Remember, you can also join Emily Swap ICT YouTube channel as a special member by clicking on the join button and then following the process of becoming a super member and any other type of special member to enjoy special perks for my various presentations. For any further correspondence, kindly write it to us through the email emilyswap@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening to me. Let's meet in part 28 of the series, and God bless.